is the MDI's National Management Convention, also known as the Red Carpet Event of MDI. It is an ideal platform for corporate leaders to assess the budding managers and gain from their out-of-box and innovative approach to various issues. It provides an ideal platform to brand, network and explore research opportunities. Now coming to the panel for the day. Infrastructure forms the backbone for any economy. It provides the platform which is used for the development of a country as a whole. The importance of infrastructure becomes all the more important for a developing country like India. However, the problems associated with development of infrastructure are also plenty. With this in backdrop, I would like to kick off the Finance Economic Panels of Delphique in association with Ernst Young, which is titled Attracting Long-Term Capital into Indian Infrastructure Sector, a Fresh Perspective. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed panel for the day. On the second day of Delphique in the afternoon slot, we have with us as a part of a Finance Eco panel, our industry mentor, Mr. Vikas Sharma. Mr. Sharma is an Associate Vice President at Ernst & Young at Transaction Advisory Services. He is an experienced investment banking professional with end-to-end execution experience of private equity and M&A transactions in the infrastructure sector, including specialities like renewable energy, conventional power, airports and other urban infrastructure. Sir, we welcome you on the panel. Next, we have with us Dr. Pawan Singh. Dr. Singh is the Director of Finance of PTC India Financial Services and has more than 25 years of experience in financing, including infrastructure finance. In his time, he has handled several financial proposals, both from the perspective of borrowers as well as lenders. Dr. Singh has also been closely associated with the first PPP project to be launched in the power sector. He is currently a visiting faculty member in the area of corporate financing, infrastructure financing and project financing at several management institutions in India. He has also served as a Director of Finance at Delhi Power Company Limited, Delhi Transco Limited, Indraprasth Power Generation Company Limited and Pragati Power Company Limited. Before this, he was a GM in the Power Grid Corporation Limited. Sir, we welcome you on the panel. Next, we have Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Dr. Mukesh Kumar is currently working as Vice President at SBI Capital Markets Limited and heads the transport sector vertical in Delhi. He has experience of more than 12 years in infrastructure financing and worked on financing of number of road sector projects. In his current role, he is responsible for handling projects in the area of infrastructure sectors related to project financing, debt, fundraising, business valuation, risk and bid advisory for various clients. He has been involved with several government initiatives to promote PPP projects, and apart from infrastructure financing, he has also worked on financing projects in manufacturing sector mainly in steel and textile. Sir, we welcome you on the panel. Next, we have with us Mr. Mayank Bansal. Mr. Mayank Bansal is an alum of MDI from the batch of 2002-2004. He has over 10 years of experience across project finance, investment banking and private equity, primarily in the infrastructure sectors. Currently, he is a director with Infrastructure Fund of IDFC Alternatives. His earlier stints were with Transaction Advisory Services team at Ernst & Young and Project Advisory team at SBI Caps. Sir, we welcome you on the panel. And last but not the least, we have a faculty mentor, Professor Atmanand. Professor Atmanand is the Dean and Professor of Economics and Energy with MDI Gurgaon. He has been teaching and doing research and consultancy in the area of energy and economics for the last 28 years. Besides playing a key and decisive role in MDI's intellectual and administrative functioning, Dr. Atmanand has held various national responsibilities, including his association as member of State Finance Commission, Government of Bihar, and with the Planning Commission, Government of India. Dr. Atmanand is a deep researcher, teacher, and writer. He has authored 16 books and published 90 research papers in various national and international journals. Sir, we welcome you on the panel. I now request the team to come over the dais and present the research findings to the esteemed panel.
Team panelists, it gives me immense pleasure to say that we really acknowledge the opportunity given by Delphique and Ernst Young to study the infrastructure sector in India. As well as I'd like to thank our dear Professor Atmanand for giving us some key insights into how to go about the project and coming out with recommendations. I'd like to introduce the panels, the researchers in the panel. I'm Nikhil Sharma, this is Sakshi, and that's Akhil, that is Anurag, and Adik, and Govil, and Raman. India has a projected investment of around $1 trillion in the infrastructure sector in the 12th financial year plan. And recently, with the changing government and the rolling out of new FDI policy, this sector has seen some dynamism and some catalysis which requires us to study this sector by taking a fresh look into how to attract capital into this sector. In our research, we have studied the existing regulatory frameworks as well as the policies existing in India, and we've followed a case-based study approach. We studied successful and unsuccessful projects to come out with recommendations regarding these changes in policies and regulations. In addition to that, we've also studied the avenues of bringing investment in the infrastructure sector in various subsectors as well, and the recommendations accordingly. The study approach that we've followed is that we've divided the whole project into three major sectors: transport sector, power sector, and real estate sector. And we've come out with recommendations separately for each of these sectors. So I'll be taking the transport sectors. Port sector is, in 2010 the government came out with the Maritime Agenda 2010 to 2020 framework, which replaced the National Maritime Development Program, and this was to increase the capacity from around 600 million metric tons to 3500 million metric tons till 2020. And recently we have seen the FDI policies being rolled out, such as 100% FDI in the ports development sector, as well as a 10-year tax holidays. So this has been a key driver in the port sector. Now, if you observe carefully, the total amount that has been allocated for port development, that is around 2.8 billion rupees. Out of that, 57% is concentrated on the non-major ports, which gives us a key insight that there has been an increase, an annual increase of traffic from major to shift of traffic from major to non-major ports. The CAGR for growth of major ports is around 2%, while that of non-major ports is 13%. So this gives us an insight of the key driver, but this is one of the major key drivers for ports. Another key driver would be that because of the overutilization of the major ports as well as the western ports, for example JNPT and Mumbai ports, there has been a shift to the eastern ports. Also because the eastern ports offer the opportunity, as they are closer to the iron ore and steel plants, as well as they handle the major bulk load. In our study, we studied some projects, for example JNPT project and Kakinada project and Gangavaram project, and from that we identified some of the key issues that are plaguing the port sector. One of the major issues that an investor looks into before investing in port sector is hinterland connectivity. And as you know that major ports such as Mumbai and JNPT have been facing major issues, such as the JNPT Tughlakabad rail corridor. It's the most congested corridor in India. And the government has proposed a freight corridor and SEZ at JNPT to bring some relief. Another issue plaguing this sector is the port trust model. If you look at the world's most successful port models, it has been the landlord port model, which has been followed at Rotterdam or Antwerp model. And India is shifting from port trust model to a landlord port model, which is a new beginning to the port sector. As a perfect example of that would be the Ennore port. An issue which is one of the most major issue that an investor considers before investing in port is the tariff policy, which has been facing quite some issues since many years. It was amended in 2005 and 2009 after the first PPP of India in JNPT and with NSICT. And the investors complain that the process of tariff setting is lengthy. There are anomalies in tariff setting, and also that it is indexed to inflation. Some of the other issues that this sector faces is that there has been aggressive bidding, which leads to later cancelling of the bid. An example would be the fourth container terminal project of JNPT, or there has been low or no bidding. So the government clearances in this sector has faced quite big issue if you consider this Ministry of Environment and Forest clearance. Because of this, the Mormugao developed by Adani Ports project has faced some bottlenecks. So investment in India, if you see in the 11th plan, around 40% of the investment that was projected was cancelled or transferred to the 12th plan, which highlights due to the issues that I highlighted in the previous slides. It's because of that the 40% of the funds allocated was transferred to the 12th plan, and that's why the government has rolled out with this plan of 100% FDI in the port. Studying the successful as well as the unsuccessful projects in port sector, we came out that a private equity investor, or in order to attract equity, the major factor considered is mitigating risks. If an investor is able to mitigate risks well, then he can then it's a viable investment in port. So we studied 3 cases of successful projects, and we came out with a framework to mitigate risks, or if not mitigate, then distribute them. And some of the risks pertaining to the port sector are land acquisition or external linkages, market risks and financial risks. Some of the mitigants methods are stated in the slide. For example, in case of Gangavaram project, the market risk was mitigated by contractual framework, such as no concession fee during the loss periods. And the financing methods recommendation for this sector will be discussed in the coming slides. Coming to the next sector, which is the airport sector. This sector is the one which has seen the maximum push by the government. For example, 100% FDI in greenfield projects, 100 through automatic route, 100% FDI in brownfield projects through Foreign Investment Promotion Board route, and 49% FDI allowance in the aviation foreign carrier segment. Air Asia would be a perfect example to cite it. The airport authority also has developed 23 major airports, 23 airports, metro airports in past 5 years, and plans to invest $11.3 billion in the non-metro airports. Also, if you see that there has been a lot of participation by the foreign investors. For example, Malaysia Airports Holdings or the Frankfurt Airport Services, and private investors such as GMR, which have transformed the IGI airport and the Hyderabad airport, have not just made a mark in India, but they've also recently there has been a development of GMR getting a contract with a project in developing Philippines International Airport. So this shows that what kind of development the airport sector is experiencing, and that it is this kind of development and attraction of investment has been majorly centered around the SEZ Aerotropolis model, which is that a city's economy and infrastructure is centered around its airport. Next, I'll call upon Sakshi to cover roads.
So let's now focus our attention towards the roads. So basically, first I would like to start that as we all know that India has the second largest road network with approximately 4.6 million kilometers, of road length. Also, it covers 90% of the passenger traffic as well as 65% of its fleet. So in the past 50 years, we've experienced 8-fold increase in the road network length as well as 20-fold increase in the traffic. So surely it presents a certain amount of lucrative and attractive investments for the foreign as well as the private players. In terms of investments, there are basically three types of projects that government invites the PPP projects or the investments. That is the National Highway Development Projects, the Golden Quadrilateral, and the North-South, West-East Corridor. So, by inviting the projects in this area by the government, it has been observed that owing to the inherent complexity of the PPP projects, due to the finances, the regulations, as well as the documentations and taxation of these projects, there are certain inherent risks which always have played certain part in various projects that have been taken by the government so far. The risks in terms of regulation, legal, the financial, revenue-based, or you can say the force majeure, natural occurrence, have always played a role. So, while studying these, we have basically seen that the case studies we have basically considered, be it the Delhi-Gurgaon Expressway, the Vadodara Toll Road, or we can say the Gwalior-Jhansi Highway Link Road, the Gwalior-Bhind UP-MP project. Every one of them at one point or the other have faced this kind of risks in their life, in their duration of these projects. So how these issues basically need to be tackled, we basically look upon the investment incentives correcting these issues which we have faced so far. So firstly, the simplified policies with transparent procurement procedures is a need that will invite the foreign players to come and play basically invest in these projects. So the recent government investments in the policies wherein the clearances in terms of land as well as environment has been basically promoted by the government as one of the positive the positive stimulus that the government has introduced so that the multiple players can come and invest in this. Because the land clearances and environment clearances are one of the major hindrances that have led to the delays in the overtime cost runs and have led to the basically low returns on the project than expected. So in terms of land clearances, for example, no bidding out of the project until 80% of the land has been acquired. One of the recent developments in August 2014 by the ministry has basically played a positive role, inviting the foreign players to invest in this road sector. Also for the environmental clearances, dropping down of the complete land acquisition as one of the prerequisites for obtaining the environmental clearances is another thing that has been introduced so that the foreign players are introduced. The next thing we basically recommend is the clearances of the MCA, that is the Model Concession Agreements. Now, clearing these issues, basically how they help us is that while clearing these Model Concession Agreement terms will help in having that basic PPP model, which will help the foreign concessionaires to come play to have a fair play in terms of the build, operate and transfer, which they are not able to play nowadays because of certain problems in the tolls at one way or the other. So basically empowering of the CCA of the Ministries of Road and Transport so that we can have the amendments in this MCA at some point or the other, and also deciding upon the mode of delivery is one of the again other advancements that will attract the investments in the sector. Also, in addition to that, the standardization viability gap funding of up to 40% project cost based on competitive bidding is another solution that can help us. Apart from that, in terms of cost and financing, the proper allocation of the risk factors in the basic dispute resolution is what we require. Another proposal wherein the developers could be allowed to exit immediately after completing their project rather than involving them till the end is another measure that will basically invite or basically help to rope in all those people, all those investors who may be good at executing the project but not the operational activities. So it will give them a kind of flexibility to come and invest in the sector. In addition to that, 100% FDI is always a kind of a booster and an incentive for the players to come and invest in the sector. Apart from that, the revenue sharing form of negative grants as well as concession fees is another boosters in the sector that we have experienced so far. Apart from that, the retention of the tolls which are basically the problems that the foreign players have basically experienced can be and should be resolved utmost priority. It is because 95% of the revenue of these foreign players and the investors come from the toll. So a proper restructuring of this toll has to be there in place by keeping into account the proper segmentation of these single trip and the multi-trip users, so that a proper analysis is there in place before we go on further, just placing the money and then not getting so much returns. So proper restructuring of toll is something that we would suggest studying the case study so far. So considering all those investment incentives, the investment opportunities will be open not only for the roads, bridges and bypasses, but also in terms of the consultation services, in terms of the collaboration with the equipment manufacturing, equipment leasing or the design engineering, and will open this sector for the potential it has, and will basically invite all those investors to have the long-term investment in the sector. So now I'll call upon Akhil to discuss this.
Indian Railways, as you all know, is one of the largest railways in the world, and it's the largest railway under single management. The earnings approximately was 1.4 lakh crore in FY14 and 1.22 lakh crore in FY13, which gave a rise to, which gave an increment of around 15.33% in the past year. In investment point of view, there has been a lot of investment proposed and ongoing in this sector. The 8.8 megawatt solar power plants is already rolled out. It's in the railway stations, railway office buildings and level crossings, which has been phased out and properly planned where it has to be implemented. The DPR for Kochi Metro Phase 2, which extends to the airport, is also ready and is going to start soon. Then there is a decongestion for allowing decongestion in Bangalore. The government is considering a direct train from Bangalore to Mysore, non-stop train, which is also in the investment phase. Apart from these, there are Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which the Indian government has rolled out already, and also the new IT initiatives by the then Railway Minister S.D. Sadanand Gowda. Government initiatives, if we talk about, there are two different MOUs signed, one with China and other with Czech Republic. Both are for the technical cooperation in this sector. Then, as you all know, the government has allowed 100% FDI through automatic route, which means that there is no prior government approval required for putting in FDI in the sector. Apart from this, there is a railway committee, which is Kakodkar committee, which gives 106 recommendations on the safety of railways, like the critical safety, like the shortage of critical safety spares and the general safety matters, and etc. So those are also will be implemented in the near future. Apart from this, the Indian government has cleared a railway coach factory in Karnataka, which is projected to make around 500 units per year. If we talk about road ahead, what is there for the railway sector which has been so underutilized, like in terms of private investment? If we talk about that, we will come to know that in the 12th 5-year plan, $95.6 billion have been projected to pump in by the Indian government, and that is huge in terms of seeing the past records. There are 42 billion of US dollars is projected to put into the metro railway. 7 are into construction, and 25 to 30, including the MRTS and the rapid metro, are under the planning phase. In the recent news, there are 38 specific projects which the government have identified, which is projected to attract around 90,000 crore rupees as a private investment from FDI. So these projects includes the Mumbai Panvel railway line and similar projects. As we all know, our new railway minister, Shri Suresh Prabhakar Prabhu, is a CA by profession, and we all know his track record of his reformage. So in the near future, we can see how much of a reform can come in, and all the reforms that I have talked about and all the reforms that could happen is projected to be a reality in the near future. So there is a huge potential that is lying in the near future, and he has identified 4 high priority areas for this sector, which is faster clearing of files and customer service and railway safety, dedicated freight corridor and making railways profitable, which is one of the most important and the high priority area. Next slide. Then the recommendations to attract the overall transport sector capital in the overall transport sector. If you see in that table, we'll come to know that the debt market in India is so immature and is so underdeveloped, and there is a huge potential lying within it. Even if you compare with other emerging economies. In terms of other recommendations, the important ones are the restructuring of NPA, which says that the infrastructure project usually requires 20 to 40 years of concession period and to become viable and to show that they are viable. So initial few years may be very bumpy, the road may be not so good, and the banks usually make them NPAs in the initial year. So there has to be restructuring of NPA, there has to be a specific relook into those projects which are giving a return in the long term. Then the role of IIFCL, which I want to highlight, is very important. India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited. There is a rule that 10% of subordinated debt can be given from IIFCL, and this corporation is government supported and is very high rated. So this is very under leveraged. So this is a very important factor, that if this 10% can be leveraged into the infrastructure project, the ratings of the bonds and the ratings of the projects can go better, and that is why the private investments, it may look very attractive to private investments if the investments look looks promising. Then there is a role of IDF, infrastructure debt funds. These are also very important because, again, as I said, there is asset liability mismatch because of huge the loan that is given, that is huge, the tenure period is huge, and banks usually want the tenure period to be between 10 to 12 years, which is why the infrastructure debt funds is required, which will use as refinancing of loans. The banks can refinance themselves in 10 to 12 years, and this fund can be used to refinance the loans. So these are huge plus if it comes forward and if it is utilized properly, and banks will give a confidence that we'll get back our money in 10 to 12 years. Which in contrast will take 20 to 40 years if actually funded full infra project. Also, the liberalizing norms of ECB is also very much required because external commercial borrowing is very underutilized right now, and the foreign investments will definitely want to invest in India with interest rates being so high. So this is there's a cap on that, and if that cap is removed, which we project to be coming with the new railway minister, and if this comes forward, there is a huge attraction in the coming years. Now, I think we'll come forward and take the policy.
Okay, thank you again. Now moving on to the power sector, we'll first have a quick overview of the sector, then we'll focus more on the financing side of the sector. So, having the power generation, India is the third largest power producer in the world. It has 4.8% of the global share, installed capacity of 254 gigawatts, and we can see from the pie chart that 70% of the power is generated from thermal powers, 16 is from hydro, and 12% is from renewable energies. So, moving on to the renewable energy sector in India. The renewable energy sector in India is around 32 gigawatts. In last 5 years, we have seen a CAGR of 17% in this sector. And India has the fifth largest wind power installed capacity after US, China, Spain, and Germany. So, we can also see that the 67% of the renewable energy comes from the wind power and 9% from solar power. So, in the recent Indian budget, there was an allocation of 5 billion rupees for the proposed ultra mega power projects. And there was also full exemption of the excise duty for the equipments consumed in the factory for the production of non-conventional energy. And also for regarding FDI policy, 100% FDI is allowed under the automatic loop. So we have also done a various case study. One of them was Subasiri Lower Hydropower project in Assam. So this project was started in 2003 and till now it was not implemented. When the project was awarded in December 2003, the work could not begin in initial 13 months because of the problem of land acquisition. Then in May 2009, the work was stopped for 5 months because of bad weather. Then from December 11, the work is stopped because of protests from local groups. So we can see that the original project cost was 6,285 crores and it has gone up to 10,667 crores. So effect from the project was that in last 3 years due to protests from local groups, the project cost has gone up by 1,200 crores. The executive director of the project told that they are incurring a loss of 10 crore rupees per day. So coming back to the government said that we are going to talk to all the stakeholders and we are going to implement the project soon. So after doing various case studies like Subansiri Lower hydropower project and Sambar Lake, which is the largest solar power project in Rajasthan, we came out with major roadblocks in power sector, which is getting difficulties in acquiring land, getting environmental clearance, work may be stopped due to bad weather, protests from local groups, change in government in between the project, dispute between central and state government, which we have seen in the solar power project of Rajasthan. So these all issues lead to the main problem of which is the financing of the power sector. So now some of the important missions which are launched by the government in last few years. One was the Rajiv Gandhi Gram Vidyutikaran Yojana. In this they have the aim to provide electricity to all the rural households. And the main aim is to provide free of cost electricity to the people, to the family households which are below the poverty line. The other one is Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission. In this the government has the aim of to implement 20,000 megawatt of solar power till 2022. So this project was divided into 3 phases. We can see that for the target of first phase was successfully achieved by the government, and we hope that in the future it is also going to achieve the target. And the new government after the Mr. Piyush Goyal also announced that they are going to launch a national wind energy mission to untap the huge potential of the wind energy in India, also through offshore wind energy technology. So now moving to the thermal power sector in India. So we can see that thermal power sector capacity is on 180 gigawatts. 86% comes from the coal, 13% is from gas. So they have also ultra mega power projects which have capacity of around 4,000 megawatts. In the recent Indian budget, they also announced 10-year tax holiday, rupees 100 crores for ultra modern supercritical coal thermal power technology, which enhances the capacity of the plant by having lower emission. Also, there was a new program launched. For this, there was allocation of 500 crores to improve the feeder segregation in the rural areas. This will improve the transmission distribution network which is used in the rural India, so that we can have a better, less amount of aggregate technical and commercial losses. So FDI in this sector is also 100% in thermal and hydropower electricity generation and distribution to industrial, household and commercial users, and also in power trading. So after doing various cases of Tala project, which was a joint venture of Power Grid Corporation and Tata Power, we came up with some of the major risks and what are the mitigation strategies. So first one is completion risk or construction risk. In this we can have a EPC, which is engineering, procurement and construction contracts, in which we can have a penalties for shortfalls in performance for the non-completion of the project at the right time. Performance and operating risk. We already know that there are major fuel supply agreement issues in India. So for this we can have an agreement with the company to have such that we can get penalty from them in the event of non-performance. For foreign exchange risk, we can have cross-currency swaps. For cash flow risk, we can ask government to have guarantees for the payment for the power which has been delivered. For inflation risk, we can have a price variation formula built into power purchase agreement, so that this price variation will be indexed with the WPI or CPI. So whenever the inflation goes high, our prices will go, tariff prices will increase accordingly. For regulatory risk, this depends on the government, and the new government is giving positive sentiments, so we need to maintain that maximum transparency of procedures. So market risk, government can give initial payments to cover the earnings if the power demand is low, which is highly unpopular because in India we know that power demand is very high. So now coming to the main topic, financing of power sector. In 11th Plan Commission, around 8,17,700 crores was spent in the power sector, and for the 12th 5-year plan, they have a projection of 13,72,580 crores. And for debt to equity for center, they have debt to equity of 70-30, percentage is 80 and 20, and percentage is 75 and 25. So now major sources of funding in power sector, commercial banks. In last 14 years, commercial bank credit to power sector has increased by a CAGR of nearly 43%. In last 5 years, had tremendous growth from 1,033 billions to 4,083 billions. And now recently the government also authorized the permission to raise the capital of IREDA from 1,000 crores to 6,000 crores. And last fiscal year, IREDA made the disbursement of around 2,471 crores for the projects in power sector in renewable energy. And coming to resource base of IREDA, we can see that 47% comes from the international assistance, which is from bilateral and multilateral agencies, and 1% is from National Clean Energy Fund, which is a fund started by the government, and it has a capacity of 100 crores for funding the clean energy projects. Insurance companies, most of the insurance companies are risk averse. They mostly invest in government securities, and IRDA also has IRDA also has a rules and regulation for insurance companies that 75% of their infrastructure spending should be in the power projects of credit rating of AAA. So because of this, they just make the payment minimal for the power sector. Now ECB up to $500 million with a maturity period of 5 years is allowed under the automatic rule. There are also multilateral agencies, but the main problem in the multilateral agencies is that due to the past track record of power sector, they are not much confident of the India, and also because of this, they take a long time for appraisal of fundings. Bond market in India, we have always seen is we don't have a large and active liquid bond market. IDF, we have seen there is a vehicle for refinancing the existing debt of infrastructure companies. Last year, Power Finance Corporation made a disbursement of amount equal to 47,800 crores, and it mobilized funds equal to 45,000 crores from various sources like bonds, debentures, loans from banks and financial institutions, and commercial papers and short-term loans. The main point to note is that the Power Finance Corporation was not able to raise money through ECB. Their main reason was that global economic slowdown, unfavorable market conditions, and unavailability of the funds at competitive rate. So this is a major issue for in the power sector, that Power Finance Corporation is not able to raise money through ECB. So now rural electrification companies had financed nearly 1,035 projects, made a disinvestment of 35,000 crores, and they have mobilized around 37,000 crores. And the main point is to note here is that source of mobilization was one of them was bilateral assistance, which are from GICA Japan and KfW Germany, which made a support of 220 crores. Now in IIFCL, they have financed 40 projects last year in the power sector, and they made disbursements of around 9,000 crores. They have launched a new initiative of credit enhancement initiative. In this, they have a 50% of the guarantee backed by Asian Development Bank, and just 50% is backed by government. So because of this, the project credit rating increases and lender supports the project developer. So main financial issues in the power sector are, we have divided into the financial issues, policy issues, and regulatory issues. Financial issues are mean that most of the banks and infrastructure finance companies have placed the prudential limits. The tenure of funds for power sector projects are very long, and banks, because of this, face an asset liability mismatch. And also ECB has a ECB lenders want to have a short-term exposure in power sector. Cost of rupee funding is high as compared to cost of funding from the foreign currency. So for this, company wants to go for ECB or multilateral agencies, but we have already seen that there are various problems in this sector. The policy issues we have already covered, like land acquisition, free supply agreement, environmental issues, and poor financial health of distribution companies. The regulatory issues are that there are delays in bidding process, and also in case one bidding process, there is high fuel risk involved. Because of this, the bank doesn't want to lend to the projects which are under the phase 1 bidding. So the main part of the project, the recommendation to attract long-term capital. The growth in bank credit to power sector will mainly depend on retained earnings and increase in bank's capital. Most of the public sector banks lend to infrastructure sector. So for this, the government either has to dilute its shareholding or to infuse capital into the public sector banks. Securitization can also be done, but it should be done only when the project is generating income successfully, and for this there should be proper regulation supervision to avoid any chances of case like 2008. And for policy issues, we can have faster land acquisition, faster environmental clearance, single window clearance system can also be implemented. There is one major thing is credit enhancement. There is a need to develop more credit enhancement projects. In this, we can have a credit guarantee agency which can provide a credit guarantee to lenders that in case a project developer fails, they will service a portion of debt. So now, as the bond market is very weak in India, so Planning Commission has suggested to allow banks and domestic financial institutions to provide credit enhancement for infrastructure bonds. As of now, RBI has a cap of 20%, so this limit of 20% can be further increased. there is a huge untapped municipal bond market in India. If you see the US, 12% of India's infrastructure spending comes from the municipal bond markets. For this, we can have a financial intermediary and which can issue municipal bonds on behalf of local urban bodies. In 1998, Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation raised rupees 1 billion through the municipal bonds. So we can implement such things in as of now also. So the recent step taken by new government which will promote infrastructure spending. They have started 5 to 25 lending structure. In this, bank can give loan for 25 years and they can refinance it after every 5 to 7 years. This refinancing of loan will not be considered as these structured loans, and this will avoid the long-term provision requirements. And also, bank can issue long-term bonds with maturity of more than 7 years into infrastructure sector. And these bonds will not come under the NDTL requirements or minimum CRR or SLR requirements of RBI. And Environmental Ministry has recently, in the initial days of governance, has launched the online environmental clearance and forest clearance system. So now Zaman will take over the real estate sector.
Okay, so now I'll take over with the real estate sector. So first of all, we are covering the two sectors under this. First is the construction sector and then is the housing industry. So moving on. Okay, so first of all, let me take you through the order inflows for the last few years. For last 5 years, we'll see over here that how the order inflows over here, the order book growth has taken a deep cut, and this is because of the slowdown in the economy, the stalled projects. The construction companies are not getting enough projects, and moreover, we see in 2011-12, their orders which were earlier placed, they were taken back. So these companies have taken a real hit because of the economic slowdown. Now we come down to the second chart. If we see that there has been a steep rise in the debt level, both in the short term and the long term. Particularly a matter of worry for us is the short term loans, which have increased a lot because for the infrastructure companies they need long term loans. But because of the delay in the projects, delay in the revenues, they have to fund their costing through the short term loans, particularly the working capital loans. Here if we see the working capital loans, the debtor days have increased to 146 days. It is because the big companies like GMR Infra or the major companies who give you projects or sometimes the stalled projects, because of those the payments are being delayed to a greater extent. Now if we come down here, factors which are impacting the profitability of the construction companies are, one is the technical complexity. There is always a problem in the project execution, then there is some interest rate risk, but particularly if we talk about here is the bidding stage. One thing that I would like to talk about is bidding stage. Competition is so, there is so much competition in the construction sector that they end up having the projects where they will be able to break even only. So these projects bidding at bidding stage only, the projects are not very profitable. You get to know that. So generally, the second point, generally the small operators, which are the subcontractors, their profit margins are less than 300 to 500 basis points. So there also the profitability takes a hit. And in the recent times, when there is too much competition, it has further gone down. The next, so these are the sectors which particularly contribute to the construction spending. If we look at on the left hand side, the top diagram, here it shows it how the roads, then irrigation, urban infra, railways, what is the contribution of each sector towards the construction spending. And if we see the below diagram over here, there is the construction spending intensity. Like if we spend 1 rupee on the roads, the 95%, the 0.95 paisa of that spending goes to the construction. Similarly, it goes for the power with 50%, irrigation 80%, and so on with the. If we see, yes, one thing if we see over here is railways. The 90% of the spending on the railways goes to the construction sector. So there is a huge business that might come from the road sector and the railway sector because the intensity of the spending over there is quite high. Now we come to the recent changes in the government rules. If we see, this is the major change recently done by the Modi government, that the minimum built area has been reduced from 50,000 square meters to 20,000, minimum capital investment from 10 million to 5 million, and the lock-in period from 3 years to the minimum of 3 years from the date of investment of the completion. What is the impact of this rule change? Particularly, this has provided the exit to the foreign investors. Earlier, the foreign investors were stuck in the building of the process, and there was a concept of developed projects. You could only exit when the project is completely developed. Right now, there is no such thing because the developed project meant that there are facilities of roads, sanitation, everything is over there in that project. But now they can exit. So particularly the repatriation of the profits is made possible. Now we talk about the corporate debt restructuring cases which have happened in last 3-4 years. The major of one is the Lanco case, Gammon case and HCC. The one thing that is similar in all these cases, why they are suffering is one is the slowdown, but particularly the interest rate. These companies have been paying the interest at the rate of 14%, 15%. That is too high if we compare them with the global peers. So now after the restructuring, the rebate was given to them 2.5% for Lanco and similarly 1 to 2% for Gammon. Though HCC, the rebate was not available. But yes, there was a moratorium of around two years to each company. But for HCC, it is a unique case that we got to know that when it's obvious that when CDR is done, the rating goes down, and if you want to raise further capital, it's very difficult because the interest rate would be high. So HCC came out, they exited their CDR, they tried to exit their CDR process because they were not able to raise the further capital. Moving onwards. Okay, so these are the recommendations to attract the foreign investment in construction industry. First is the development of bond market. We know this is a far-fetched solution because what we recommend is the municipal bonds that we can issue, because if the municipal corporations are able to issue the bonds, they'll be able to, they don't rely on anybody else, and they'll be able to spend on the capital expenditure. Particularly if we talk about the Delhi and Mumbai, particularly I'm talking about the metros, they'll be able to spend on the capital expenditure without any reliance on anybody else. Loans at the low rate, at the time of economic slowdown and the low order inflow, we know that they are suffering too much because of the high rate. What we recommend is, though there is no provision right now in the finance ministry or to provide the loans at the low rate, but we recommend that some organization like IFCL or IDFC, if there is any provision that you can provide long-term capital at a lower rate, that would be very beneficial for the construction sector. Now the next is the clearing backlog of stalled projects. We all know that it is the derived demand of the infrastructure that the construction industry flourishes. If we see here, the 60% of the total spending comes from the government, 30% from the businesses. So government has to clear the stalled projects at the earliest so that the revenue comes to these companies. Next is the investment spending in housing. This is one of the one more proponent that can be there. If the housing, the spending on the housing increases, that goes to the construction as well. Now this is one of the main. The next is the main land acquisition bill, which was passed by the previous government in December. There were loopholes that has actually, instead of flourishing this sector, has acted as a roadblock for this sector. Like the one rule over there, 70% consent is needed for the PPPs and 80% is needed for private. This rule has made it too difficult for the investment to come in this sector because the clearances are not given on the land. Moreover, the compensation is defies all logics, like 2 times the market price and 4 times the market price in urban and rural areas respectively. It is something which is a big hindrance because you end up paying too high price for the land. So and the next one is the lack of clear titles to farmers. There are not very clear titles to farmers, because of which the companies who are making investment they suffer at a later stage. So we recommend that the case, a particular area should be taken and the case should be solved, everything should be solved case by case. So incentives to infrastructure sector, like if the infrastructure is moving well, obviously the derived demand will come to the construction sector. Next. Okay, now we'll cover the housing industry. We see that there is a housing shortage in India to the extent of 10 million over here. The population is increasing. As per the McKinsey report, the urbanization in India would go to 40% from the 30% at the current level, and this target will reach by 2030. So we need a lot of houses to be built, but there is a problem because the investment is not coming. There is not much spending on the housing sector. So the guideline in the next few slides we'll talk about the guidelines and all. Okay, so we have studied a regression analysis which was done by Bandyopadhyay and Saha. It's an econometric study which talks about the various factors they have taken into consideration, which actually tells you what are the factors that lead to default and what is the intensity of those sectors. After studying these reports, we got to know that EMI obviously is one of the factors which has to be paid attention, because the 10% increase in the EMI would lead to the default about 4.5%, and the coefficient is quite high. Second is the age factor as well. If the loan is provided to the sector to the age group of 40 to 50, the probability of default goes down. And employment and the other residential areas is also the one factor. One shocking thing that we came across over here is that you increase the amount of loan, like you increase the amount of area that you are providing the loan for, the default ratio goes down because the investment in that area is too high for the one who has taken the loan. Okay, so now the smart cities. We know the smart cities has been a buzzword since the time Mr. Modi became president. Prime Minister. Okay, so Modi has initiated plans to build 100 smart cities. Okay, and this is particularly the reports also supports that our population will reach 59 crores by 2030. We rely heavily on the foreign investment because the government has pledged only $1.2 billion for this. That is too meager to build even a small smart city. Okay, so we have taken suggestions from the Singapore. We have taken pledge from the Singapore to build one city. Moreover, British Chancellor has pledged on credit line of £1 billion to the company, to UK company who will provide the services. Okay, so smart cities. What is smart city? Particularly, we all know that they use ICT, information communication and technology, to for the running of the city. They use mobile apps. They use IT. They check water levels to this and all. So basically, the epitome of the smart cities are the Singapore, Amsterdam, and particularly the recent one has been Ivory near Seoul, South Korea. Okay, so on the right hand side, you can see the prototype of a smart city, which is the Gujarat International Finance Tech City, which is the pet project of Mr. Modi. It's situated between Ahmedabad and Gandhinagar. It will reside around 5 lakh people with opportunity for 50,000 people to work, with the 2 buildings of 28 floors and 80 stories. It is basically the electricity will be through solar panels and the sanitation system will be automatic. Yes, the companies, what is the incentive to companies who will be coming to this is they will face low taxation, and also that they will give permission to banks to operate in international currency. This is the first time which is taking place in India. Next. Okay, so we studied on European model, which talks about 2020 target. That is the 20% reduction in EU greenhouse gas emissions, renewable resource share increasing to 20%, and 20% improvement in EU's energy efficiency. Though Europe already has the basic infrastructure at its place, we cannot focus on, we cannot actually target this thing. We'll target this thing. We'll take small things from the best things out of here and try to implement in our model. Okay, so one thing that this model has done is magnificent. They have included the lead organization, the organizations like public authority, your NGOs, your business, and academic research institutions. This is a holistic framework which tells that all the participants would come together and help in building smart cities. The barriers to European model is the high risk, energy prices, gestation period, and public funding. So we'll move forward. We have tried to make a prototype of Indian smart cities. One is like we don't recommend go for the smart city from the scratch. Rather, we say that make existing cities smart cities, because the reason being it's economical and logical to improve metros. There is a dire need of infrastructure overhauling. The cities like Gurgaon and Noida have already proved that the small cities in the vicinity of or in the outskirts of the metro will be the best way to develop a smart city. And also the risk bundling is there, because the risk compared to the new smart city is less in the existing city, because there is already huge demand for residential and commercial area. Commercial viability is possible because of the business opportunities. New smart cities may not attract lakhs of people as we think, and the next one is the utilization is high because of the existing population in the existing cities. So the next we say the focus on the sanitation, power availability, bridges and highways, 2020 targets, and integration of all the programs like Jawaharlal Nehru Rural Urban Program and other power programs. They should be brought under one umbrella so that all the projects go with the integration. Okay, so these are the nature of risk. Like the operational risk is like we don't know whether after 20 years smart city would be we would live in the smart city or not. The technological, right now the concept has been tested in computers and labs. We don't know how it will actually come out when it is implemented. The construction risk is there of the execution and the construction. Policy risk, because already there was a logjam in the policies, and we know that the interest rate risk, the policies of government like GAR and transport pricing were there. So these issues were always there as a policy risk. Financing is one of the major, obviously financing is one of the major risks, but we have tried to find out the solutions for that. Like for the operational risk, we recommend to go for the nurturing of laborers to make them semi-skilled. For instruments to combat technological risk, we recommend that the government go for co-financing or subordination loans and sometimes equity support as well. Sometimes guarantees to well in case of the companies are making losses in the initial years. Instruments to combat construction risk is timely execution, proactive approach by the government, subordination of loans providing guarantees so that the companies don't end up losing their money. Instruments to combat policy risk, the clear-cut policy should be there, and the law towards the crucial investment parameters providing subsidies in case of high tariffs or increase in the commodity prices. Government has to provide the support, and the instruments to build combat financing risk. If all the above four risks are taken care of, there is no need to go for find solution for the financial risk because the investment will come automatically. So if the four above risks are taken care of, the investment will be there. Okay, thank you. That was all.
Thanks. I now request the panelists to please come over to the dais for the discussion. The audience is free to ask any questions to the panelists or the team and put forth their points in pursuit to the research.
First of all, on behalf of the MBA students, I take this opportunity to thank all the distinguished panelists to be here this afternoon. And despite your busy schedule and your engagements, you decided to be here this afternoon. It's we are very much delighted to be here to with you. I think I also like to congratulate the students and particularly all the researchers, young mind, young researchers, who have devoted time and energy in terms of coming out with a comprehensive report on the very topical issue of attracting the long-term investments into the infrastructure sectors. I know because I have been interacting with these researchers, 10 meetings, in fact I had with them, and then time and again I was not satisfied, and then I used to tell them that these are the gaps and these are the dots that you have to connect, and these are the things that you have to do it, pertaining to the guidelines that E&Y had given to them. Frankly speaking, even if as a professor, if you ask me that, Professor, are you satisfied? So there is no end to my satisfaction. I can't say that I am satisfied. But so far as the presentation and the research has been done by this group, given the time constraint, and I think they have done a wonderful job. So give them a big hand. Coming to the topic, in fact, there is no denying the fact that this infrastructure topic, attracting long-term capital into Indian infrastructure sector, taking a fresh look, and the role of the banking and the financing institutions in terms of financing the entire gamut of the infrastructure sectors in our country today seems to be a center stage. Why? Because it's not that Modi has come, it's not that the new government has come, is talking something differently. Yes, talking differently, I agree. But it is something that the country needs it, and that the needs of infrastructure development should have been fulfilled much earlier. Otherwise, we could not have talked about the Chinese model, and we could not have talked about Korean model, we could have talked about Indian model long back. So we are far behind in terms of other countries' development process. Nevertheless, we should think about the problem of the infrastructure sector that researchers have come out with their recommendations also. And the basic premise, so far as the India's infrastructure investments are concerned, which is now in the 12th five-year plan, $1 trillion. The basic question is how to arrange $1 trillion with a huge amount of the risks that these researchers have pointed out in all the sectors that we have. How is it possible for the bankers, the financing institutions, at least the domestic financing institutions and the bankers to assume those kinds of risks and come out with any recourse or non-recourse sort of financing or project financing, whatever it is, to come forward and finance those projects? I mean, obviously, as a student of economics and finance, you know that any funds which are being invested, they requires a rate of return analysis. So if you do the rate of return analysis with reference to the risks, and if you do the sensitivity analysis and financial modeling, obviously we find that the cash flow becomes a major problem. And if cash flow is a major problem because of the uncertainty in terms of recovery of the, the dues due to the user charge problem and due to the regulatory risk and the market risk and the financial risk. So I think the lenders today in our country are definitely confused what to do. They have rightly pointed out the asset liability mismatch, that these banks and financing institutions also have to abide by the NPA rules being set by the Reserve Bank of India's guidelines and all that. Given this scenario, we are sitting here to discuss a very important questions, and question number one is this, that number one, that there is a political will on the part of the government to forge ahead in terms of accelerating the development and the pace of the infrastructure sector today in our country. At least we can observe from the newspapers and the media what Prime Minister is talking about, what the foreigners are talking about. So given this assumption, I think the onus of the responsibility today lies with the financing and the banking institutions. So today we have, luckily we have a panelist who represents SBI CAP, Sri Mukesh Kumarji, IDFC Bank, and Dr. Pawan Singh from the PFS, PTC Financial Services, and we have from the ENY Group, the overall mastermind of the infrastructure investments in our country. So the question is this, yes, agree that there are the risks, but why is it that as a banker and a lender, you don't take decisions to fund either power projects or the road projects? Is it because of your own balance sheet problem, or is it because of your cash flow problem, or is it something else that we would like to know from you as to how to go about it? So first of all, I request Dr. Pawan Singh to kindly share with the participants with your experience of financing issues.
First of all, let me thank the team for making a wonderful presentation. Akhil, Anurag, Nikhil, Sakshi, Pradeep, Govind, all of you. It was quite an insight into infrastructure, and in fact, after, normally what happens when you come to a session at 1:30, and sometimes you have had heavy lunch, so you tend to doze off. But I'm glad that you kept the attention on, and there were, because always one felt that if you bat your eyelid, probably you will be missing a point or something. So from that point of view, it was always you give the attention. So wonderful research and insight, and of course somewhat learning for us also.
Thank you very much, sir.
Many issues and many factors. What was very important, which you covered, is that these are the issues and challenges which you have in fact practically covered all the issues and challenges. Mr. Atmaram has asked me why you don't lend to infrastructure. I think you already answered it, so very little to add there. But in fact, infrastructure lending, he talked about power and road. I, of course, touch upon road, but my focus has been power area. Normally, infrastructure requires a different kind of funding, but that is one part of it. Fund is just one part of it. Lenders cannot give solution to infrastructure space. They are not the ones who will give solution to infrastructure space. So, what is bad for real economy is bad for finance. So if you have a model which is on ground economically challenging, it doesn't really work well for the financing institution. And money normally goes to a place where risks are minimum and returns are best. Unfortunately, in India, because still infrastructure lending, 70% is either through budgetary support or through banks, which largely is controlled by government. So you give a direction to the bank to lend to infrastructure, and banks start lending to infrastructure. And that's why you have so many restructuring of assets happening. And the kind of NPA, in fact, today's business standard I was going through, and they said that you combine restructured assets to NPA and you work out the NPAs for the bank, it is giving an astronomical figure of 25-30%. So when your asset quality is that bad, which bank would like to enter this area? And see, what happens is sometimes you burn your finger, and if you're burning your finger, then you are twice shy. In fact, next time you are told to do it, you be very, very careful. From our perspective, because we are pretty recent into infrastructure financing space, and sometimes somebody's problem is somebody's benefit. So that lot of people have burned their finger and they don't want to enter power. And unfortunately, in India, power gets clubbed with renewable space. So they are even reluctant to enter renewable space because they feel that it has the same problem of power. We have been there in the sector, and since we are a specialist agency, we know what kind of risks which are there. And it is giving good opportunity for us to be there. So it's not that somebody has run away from the sector. In fact, opportunity, when there's a problem, and my friend from Ernst & Young, when SBI CAP, all these people, they are into mergers, acquisition, and I asked them before the entering into the hall as to how are things. They said, well, stress, so wherever there is stress, you have Ernst & Young and SBI CAP. So it's not that sometimes bad news becomes good news, and that way it happens. So the way we look at it is, in fact, we had something behind us. Most of the challenges in infrastructure have been primarily related to policies, either physical policies or policies related to the financial institutions, the kind of policies we have had. So, for example, in power, the fuel supply was an issue. So because of that, huge delays have been happening. One doesn't have a certainty whether power. Then, of course, Supreme Court judgment came cancelling the coal block allocation. On the road, of course, there were issues of people bid very aggressively, and unfortunately, in India, what happens is that EPC players become the BOT players. So, and also what happens, unfortunately, is that the EPC players are able to skim the money and come out of it because that's where they make the money. EPC has a very high margin, so 20-25%.
Sir, sorry for intervention. We have come to know that institutions like yours or like SBI CAP and IBFC would like to be a partner to a particular SPV, at least in the power sector or the road sector, unless you have a government guarantee, unless you think that the government equities are there, or some private equity investors are also interested to be sort of as a subordinate financiers or to take out financing like that. So why is it that you guys don't take the unilateral decisions to be a financer of the projects? Is it because of the size of the project, or is it because of the risk, or is it the combination of the two? Because this is what we are reading in the newspapers, that it's not asset liability mismatch, yes, that is there, but then it's because of this, that the lenders don't want to take the risk. Lenders want a return of their money, you put it in the road of power. They don't want to jack up their funds for a long period, and therefore continue and go on facing the problems of the bank debt and all that. Now, what is the truth behind these creeds? What is the truth? I mean, please explain this truth to the students.
Truth is obvious.
What is the truth?
Truth is obvious, and it's very well captured in the presentation itself. So So I'll just be repeating what has been told earlier. But the fact is that, naturally you would not like to lend to an area where the risk is high, as I mentioned earlier. So there have been issues relating to, in any case, infrastructure lending requires a huge payback, long gestation period. So there have been ground realities issues which have to be tackled. So because of that, now, and in fact what has happened, many cases, for example, power sector, the lenders have already crossed their exposure limit norms. So they have already overexposed themselves. So they have no space left for lending into this area. So these are some of the issues, and what has happened is that restructuring has become so common. So in fact, on the ground level, at the physical level issues, policy level issues need to be tackled.
Is it because that in the power sector that is power distribution reform, which is the key to power sector reforms? On Electricity Act 2003, you don't find, at least in Delhi is an example where you think that the distribution efficiency has gone down over the last few years. Though the collection efficiency has increased, though the AT&C loss has also come down, PNB loss has come down. Why is it that the consumers in Delhi, they are quite vulnerable, and they say that they are not getting the benefits of the power privatization? The privatization is something which is being considered right now in Delhi is a bad one. I mean,
no, actually, see, Delhi started very well, but in between somewhere they lost the track, and they lost the track because of Delhi's problems are now of a different kind. Delhi's problem is that they reduced the AT&C losses, because see what happened when the private sector came in 2002 in Delhi. So they had the average collection efficiency was only 50%. So what used to happen is that a consumer pays 3 rupees 30 paise as an average tariff, but what would be collected by a distribution company is 1 rupee 50 paise, even less than, even more than that, about 157. Now, every percentage reduction which you do, you reduce the gap between, and these guys were able to bring down the AT&C losses from 52% level to roughly now 12-13%. So that kind of money they have been able to get. In fact, 2007, without tariff increase, they had reached the break-even. There was, they were able to recover the cost of supply and cost of revenue was matching. Now, in between, what happened is that 7 years you didn't increase the tariff. The AT&C had its own limitation, reduction had its own limitation of absorbing the increase in tariff, because the input cost had been going up, fuel cost had been going up. But you didn't allow that. And what you did in lieu of that is that you said that fine, there is a cost differential, whatever is the cost and whatever is the revenue, whatever is the difference, I will allow that to be recovered through later day cash flow through a regulatory asset. So they said that we can recover it after 2 years, 3 years. So everybody went on postponing it because it was a politically correct decision. It was when the distribution companies used to file a tariff petition, they were told, yes, we are allowing you the cost, but this cost we will get after 3 years, and we'll also allow you the carrying cost. So we borrow whatever is the interest rate, we'll allow that to be passed on. Now, if you keep on borrowing, your debt equity ratio gets severely skewed. If you look at BSES, which is one of the distribution companies, their debt to equity ratio is almost 1:40 today. That is the kind of debt equity ratio they have. So which lender will lend money to them? So they are ready to offer interest rate of whatever you ask. They came to us for whatever interest rate you offer. The consumer pays for that. So ultimately, what you postpone today, it adds on to total efficiency. Today or tomorrow somebody pays, either taxpayer pays or the customer pays. So that was again coming from a policy mismatch, and it's not that the performance of distribution company was not up to the mark. They performed much better than what they were expected to perform.
yes, coming to the road sector, I think you have rightly pointed out, sir, about the debt equity. If the long-term borrowing goes up very high and the debt leveraging is not possible, so no lender will come into that road. This is the real story coming from the Delhi sector right now. Now, but I don't think that the politicians or the investors or the lenders should be left for that. I think all these stakeholders have to join hands together to find out a solution of the Delhi power sector. And because Delhi power sector, I still remember there was a success story which was published in the cover page of Economist. There are two success stories which were published in Economist in the year 2004. One was the Delhi Metro was coming up and the other was Delhi Power Sector privatization. So therefore, let us try to build up the process of privatization rather than shocking the critical parts and criticisms and criticizing each other. So I think the lenders will have to come forward and will have to join hands together to make it a success.
No, let us be very clear on one thing. Lenders, a pure commercial lender, is not a social institution. Let us be very clear on that. A pure lender takes a commercial call. So we are not here to give grant, we are not here to give budgetary support, nor we have that kind of money coming to us. So if we are doing pure lending, it will be primarily on a commercial sense, nothing else.
Okay, coming to the road sector, I think Dr. Pawan Singh does not agree because they have commercial interest. What do you think SBI Caps and IDFC, you also have a commercial interest or you have some social interest? Give us some example of the Delhi Gurgaon Expressway. Both guys were the financier of the Delhi Gurgaon Expressway and also join hand together, but later on they get out from this crisis and then one is still involved, the other has to get out from this crisis. Like SBI Caps, Mukesh Kumar ji, if you can enlighten us on the various tricky issues of financing of the road projects, particularly with reference to your experience of Kagaria bypass as well as the Delhi to Gurgaon Expressway to the participants. Yeah, please.
Yeah, first of all, I thank NBI for inviting me to interact with you. And I have been visiting your institute for some guest lecture in your FMID course. So one correction to the introducer, I am not Dr. Mukesh Kumar, I am simple Mukesh Kumar, I am not the doctorate. But yes, my experience has been mainly in road sector financing. So I will be focusing my discussion on road sector and the job which the Nikhil and Aditi has done in the road sector. I have seen that was very pertinent to my working. Commercial, as Dr. Singh has said, any lending which the banks does it, they evaluate it purely on a commercial end. So yesterday I had discussed, were you people there in that? Yeah, I said, in any financing, I have to see two things. On a going concern, I should get it back. On a gone concern, I should get it back. Okay? So there is simple logic that when a project is running, I should get my interest. When a project is not running, I should get my money. Principle. So if a project performs in these two criteria, I will lend to it. Okay, it's not that lenders are not giving money to road sector. Do you know the exposure of the road sector, the banking sector to road? It is 1,59,000 crore as on July 31, 2014. But in financing, all of my distinguished panelists will agree, there is a cardinal rule which is called last 10 rule. It means that when a project comes to you, you see that what has been your experience in last 10 projects. If the experience has been bad, you will not deal with it. For example, this Delhi Airport Expressway, worldwide this project has failed. Worldwide it has failed. There is only one Delhi the airport connectivity which is successfully running is Hong Kong. Be it Sydney, be it Madrid, be it any airport, a metro expressway link, it has failed. So when this project comes to you as a financier, you have to see that even in other country it has failed, why will it be successful in India? If you get this answer, you will fund it. Okay. If you don't get the answer, nobody will fund. First they came to us, we said no, it is not possible. Only based on this cardinal rule that my experience has been very, very bad. Not personally, but yes, by learning with other exposure. So this will, and the fate of this project is that today it is terminated by concession act. Now it is with the authority. It is not so you can understand the experience of lenders count much. They have given 1,59,000 crore to road sector. Why are they now shying away? Because they have not had a good experience. Best example is Delhi Gurgaon. At the time of financial closure, the loan given to it was about 470 crore. In 2009, it was refinanced. I was involved, and we gave a loan of 1275 crore. Why? Because the cash flow was there. IDFC looked into it, and they have given 1650 crore. It's not the mistake of IDFC. They looked into it and they have financed it. It has been terminated because of some other reasons. It's not terminated because of financial. It has not turned NPA in the books of IDFC. The cash flow was there, but it has been terminated because of other reasons. Though one can debate on that whether it was right or wrong. So the moot point here is that we have to see that how has been my experience. We have done a survey of 50 road projects taken by in which the lenders are given, including SBI, PNB, Union Bank and associated banks, and we have seen that only 3 projects came up in time, whatever it was planned. Out of that 50 projects, 47 projects are delayed by 6 months to 24 months. Now if you see the reasons for this, the concession agreement is very well defined, it is there well in place, but there are various issues. Now issues is not related to the concession agreement, it is related to adherence to the clause. Suppose it says that you have to give 80% of land before appointed date. Appointed date is defined as the date on which the financial closure has been achieved. So 80% has to be given, and the balance 20% has to be given in another next 90 days. Failure to which there will be a penalty on the authority, and the penalty is very, very minuscule. So now what has happened, a lender has given money, has started disbursing, 80% land is there, but that 30%, 20% balance land is not available. For next over 24 months, 30 months, 36 months it is not available, your money is stuck. COD is not declared, you are not getting return, and hence you will not. So what will happen when the next project comes? 100% land should be in place. Now 100% land, no project will have in place. So we have to find out solutions to it. It's not that lenders are shying away from this. Lenders are pointing it out that these are the issues, you sort it out. So first issue which the lenders have pointed out is land acquisition, that it should be very well in place. Second, the total project cost. When NHAI has estimated this project, they have estimated that it should be completed, this Delhi Gurgaon, to be done in 550 crore. And the completed cost is 1171 crore, which we discussed last night. And the termination payment is linked to your earlier TPC. Now lenders are saying that it has to be with the revised TPC or the completed TPC. So another reason for lenders signing away is the differences in the TPC, is because it has repercussions on termination payment. There has been various improvements done by the lenders which have been facing, like the exposure to road sector was earlier not defined as secure exposure. It was unsecure. But yes, in 2010 RBI has classified that exposure, any loan given to a road sector is classified as secured lending. Similarly, there is a 5/25. Yes, ALM mismatch, it is a myth. Don't worry, lenders don't fund not because that there is a ALM mismatch. No, they have given loan for 18 years, 20 years, and no fixed deposit is for 20 years. It is on an ongoing basis. So ALM is not at all that much an issue. Now RBI has come out with that 5/25 structure, whereby the amortization of the loan will be for 25 years, and the lenders will be repaid over a period of 5 to 7 years, and at the end of 7th year, it will be refinanced by a new lender or by the same lender. And if the same lender does it, it will be called as refinancing, and it will not be called as a restructuring. So that's why as Dr. Singh has said that in the today newspaper 25 to 30% it was declared that various PSU banks it is NPA or the restructure. Because of these experiences, lenders are shying away from financing infrastructure projects. But yes, whenever there is a good infrastructure project, lender will definitely fund it. But yes, based on that cardinal rule that during operation I should get the money, and after suppose something happens, then also I should get the money back. Either in road sector it is through termination payment, or so the main change if we want to make in concession agreement to, because there are various issues, we cannot sort out all the issues in one go. The last night we have discussed the scheme in the game. In this road sector, I feel NHAI does not have skin in the game during construction. Change one clause in concession agreement that during construction period also NHAI is liable to pay termination payment. You will say NHAI will start behaving in a proper manner. Because during construction period termination payment is not allowed. It is allowed only after COD. So if there is a default, concession period is to be termination payment is to be paid by NHAI, then you see all the issues will be sorted out. NHAI will start dancing because the moment a letter goes, you will have to pay. So this thing is not there. That's why NHAI is not. So this is one rule which we have. If we change in the concession agreement, then something can happen in the road sector. Now another reason for the lenders shying away is that is of viability of the project. The projects which we are now getting is non-viable mainly because of aggressive bidding, and there are other issues which the presenter has given, that land acquisition, environmental clearance and all those things. Those are it is not viable, and another reason is lack of equity. Since these are not viable, not giving returns, so equity investors are also shying away from this. So a project which we have seen, currently about 280 projects have been awarded by NHAI, and from equity perspective, private equity, only 30 to 35 projects are financeable by private equity. Balance is not at all, because equity IRR is in the range of 13 to 14, below 10, like that. So it is very, very less. So equity is also a problem, lack of equity. You can see the simple mathematics. When a project is taken by an EPC contractor, say the total project cost works out to, say for example, 1,000 crore. In that, some presenter said that 95% is the construction cost. And in road sector, it is not 95, as my experience has been saying, it is 80% is the construction cost. Balance 20% is your IDC and all. Now in a say 1,000 crore project, 800 crore is your construction cost. So which will be given to the EPC contractor, which is mainly the promoter himself. Okay. Now this 1,000 crore, the financial tie-up has to be done. So in this financial, the total project cost of 1,000 crore will be funded by debt equity of say 70-30. 30% will be equity and 70% will be debt on a thumb rule basis. It varies from project to project. So 300 crore he has to fund it from its own source. Okay. Now see what is his source. The equity is, India is starved of equity. So equity is not there. He will make money from this itself, because 800 crore of EPC contract has been given to him, and in that he will make a money of how much? 15 to 16% return on 800. That is 120 crore or 125 crore. So 120 will be coming as equity funding for this project. So still he is short of 300 minus 120, 180 crore, and he has taken 5 projects of 1,000 crore. So you have 900 crore equity short. Okay, on top, so he doesn't have this 900 crore in his kitty to fund these projects. If all these 5 projects come in time, but because of various issues, environmental clearance and land acquisition and all those things, this gets delayed. This 900 becomes 1100. Tomorrow it will become 1300. So it's getting stuck in a jam, and then which affects its own balance sheet, and that's why Lanco went into CDR, HCC went into CDR, this Gammon went into CDR, because the money has got stuck in various projects. Lanco CDR was done by me. HCC CDR has been done by me. So we know that the reasons. This is the main reason. The money which these used to get as an EPC contractor is now plowed back is into the SPV, and that SPV is not giving return, and with a shortage of 900 crore in that example. So this has how to correct the situation now? This will be done once you get a good project with good return. If there is a return in a project of 22 to 25%, Mayank Bansal will keep running and he will be standing outside your room. Please give me the equity. But if it is less than that, you will have to run after him and he will not give you appointment. So we have to see, it is just pure economic and financial sense. If I get a return, lenders will fund it, Mayank Bansal will fund it, and everybody will fund. If you don't get return, you will not. So these are some of the changes which we require to make changes in the road sector, which we can by which we can get funding. I would also like to spend some time on the railway sector. I have worked in railway sector. Railway sector is much worse than road sector. There, first they don't understand that in PPP who should take what risk. In DFCC corridor, all the sections are coming on EPC basis. I also have time. In DFCC, all sections are coming on EPC except one section which is on Dankuni to Sonnagar. It's a 500 kilometer stretch which is coming on PPP. We were involved into structuring this, and we wanted that yes, you have to first identify the risk, and accordingly the private sector can take the expected return of that, because risk and return goes hand in hand. They wanted that yes, you decide, you first tell me, the discussion happened that the private sector first has to tell me how much cargo he will move. Okay, you tell me that yes, you bring the train, I will bring the train. If that cargo is not there, I will put penalty. So then my question was, suppose there is a cargo and I ask you to bring the train, and if you don't come in time, then it is your risk, I will not come in time. How will it happen? Nobody will finance it. So because from railway side, there is no commitment. They have come out with a model concession agreement for various structures, BOT model, JV model, and non-NGR model and all those things. We are working on one project in Odisha where we wanted, with that project, railway is expected to have a 25,000 crore of annual revenue. And we are saying that, sir, why don't you share a little bit here? No, because of that we have to change the policy. We will change it. 25,000 crore, you will get an annual revenue out of this project. Why are you not changing it? There, my experience in one concession agreement, as we do MBA copy pasting, there also there was a copy pasting. And so they pasted copy one model concession agreement to another model concession agreement and drafted it. And then the name, एक जो छोटा फॉर्म था KRCL was not replaced in that. We went to the railway that you replace this. So KRCL is no, that can't be changed. You use your common sense. This is an HPRCL project, but in this it is written KRCL. You live with this. So even this thing they can't change, and then they expect the lenders to fund it. It will not. Are you getting me? Means in one model concession agreement which they copied it from KRCL, in that it remained KRCL. We wanted to change it. No, we will not change it. We have to live with this, because changing this will require 1 year. So, lot of things are required to be done in the railway sector for a commercial bank like us to come and fund it. So, it is in a very nascent stage, not even as good as road sector. Road sector has done a lot. The structure is in place. Yes, there are issues which needs to be tackled, and then it is there. With this, I'll end, and thank you very much.
The question that you have left at the end of your last two sentences was that at the end of the day, as a lender, you are invested more in cash flow.
Yes, sir.
So you discussed about the going concern and the gone concern. At the end of the day, you want money. I think you have a lot of appetite and greed for more money, more money. That's great. In a poor country like India, the user charges, the users don't have so much of money to pay for you. They say, why don't you give me a free access to the road and free access to those services? We are paying so much of taxes to the government on an average 20%. And you are asking us pay more, I don't know. Anyway, but then we have successful stories about some of the projects under the public-private partnership PPP projects. And I still remember by PGCI, Power Grid Corporation of India, Kala Transmission Power Project by PGCI and Kala Power Transmission, Dr. Pawan Singh has initiated, was 100% successful. Despite the risk, maybe delayed by 1 year or 2 years, project cost might have escalated. In the end, after 2 years, the credit rating agencies, had given the credit rating of how much? AAA or something like that, and earlier they were not able to fund even 400 crores. Later on, they agreed to fund more than 950 crores to the same project. So the same lender agreed, same State Bank of India, same IDBI, same IDFC agreed. So it varies from project to project. So therefore, Mayank, I think you must share with the participants all the success stories of IDFC in funding those projects where you are not interested more in getting money, but you have been more interested in for the social cause, for the benefits of the society, the social later than financial later.
It's great to be back. I was here last week and I felt nothing has changed in the last 10 years. I'm back today and again I feel that nothing has changed. I'm still facing tough questions from Professor Atman. Only difference is 10 years back I used to be sitting there, now I'm sitting here. Sir, I think let me start from the beginning on whose job is it to build infrastructure? Infrastructure is supposed to be ideally built by the government from the taxes that are paid by the people. Unfortunately, in India, despite tax rates being so high, we don't have surplus capital available to develop that infrastructure. That's why the governments across the world, and in India as well, have turned to the private sector to build that infrastructure. Now, private sector is not going to do it for charity. They will do it seeking their reasonable returns, and I'm using the word reasonable, I'm not using the words supernormal returns, which are generally linked with private equity. I'm using the word reasonable return. As long as any infrastructure project gives a reasonable return, everybody will run after it, including lenders, including private equity capital, including developer capital. But the problem is the way infrastructure development through PPP projects began in India was flawed. Why it was flawed? Because you were targeting EPC contractors. India did not have a history of developers or operators of infrastructure. You were targeting EPC operators, developers, whose model was to work on working capital. Take a project, do 20% of the work, build for that 20%, do the next 20%, build for that 20%, and keep rotating that capital. And as Mukesh mentioned, now unfortunately they've got into a game where they keep requiring capital. A PPP project which is of 20 years, 25 years, your capital is locked for that 25-year period. How can you keep on taking more projects? And whatever returns you are expected to get, that also are stuck because either the coal blocks have been taken away, land acquisition got delayed, COD was not declared, your beneficiaries of power are not being able to pay. So when you are stuck completely for capital, you go out and start to look for other avenues. Last 5 years, 10 years, great period. Everybody, all private equity capital, all lenders are great initiatives. Let's go out. India is booming. So much of work needs to be done. So much of capital deployment required, etc. But it was such a confused entity. Are you funding an EPC player or are you funding a developer? Nobody was clear. Globally, you've got specific funds who target EPC players, who would be looking at a growth story. You've got specific funds who would target infrastructure development, who would target toll roads, who would target power projects. who have long-term capital looking at reasonable returns, but they don't have that available in India. You've got a khichdi over here. You've got EPC contractors who are doing toll roads. You've got EPC contractors who are doing power projects. They don't know what are they funding. Now, in this scenario, if anybody says go out and do charity, sir, I'm sorry, but
I think Mike, that is your point of view. But what is the point of view of the IDS in terms of taking on?
sir, we've got a CSR group.
Yes, sir.
But having said that,
you agree with Mukesh's point of view that at the end of the day you also cash flow, money.
Sir, I would like to add one thing. In this world, nothing is free. Which is down. Nothing is free. Even the love of your girlfriend is not free. Vice versa. If you don't perform, your father will also.
So what you say is that you have to pay for love?
Yes. You ask the guys.
sir, either overtly or
So
covertly.
nothing is free. You have to pay. Yes, in one or the other way, you will have to pay. So I will give a very crude example. Have you seen a dog biting bone? It enjoys this very much. Do you know why? There is nothing in the bone, but still it is enjoyed. Why? Because while chewing it, its own blood comes in the mouth. Okay, and he loves the taste of that blood, and he enjoys it. This subsidy, free corruption is like that your own blood, and he enjoys it while chewing it. So there is nothing called free. That is the blood which you are enjoying it. In one or the other form, you will have to bear it.
Okay, sir, but I think, just 1 minute, sir, because we would like to know from you, you are working in a company called E&Y. And he's given an example of a dog, biting and sucking his own blood. Which blood are you sucking? I mean, you are generally making a real contribution to the growth story of this country. What is your vision?
Both dog and human are of interest to us.
Or none of them. Why dog? Why not lion?
Okay. I think as our role per se as an advisor, if the market is great, then typically all the developers will be looking to raise growth capital, etc. They will be looking for acquisition. So that was the period in Indian infrastructure sector, let's say in 2005 to 2006 to 2010, broadly, if I can summarize. So that was the period when a lot of investments were happening, a lot of foreign developers were coming, and private equity investors were putting money in the infrastructure sector with the hope that everything is going to be great. If you take a step back, infrastructure globally as an asset class is supposed to be having a low risk profile. But with low risk also comes expectation of low return globally. It's not that the risk profile is lower, but the return also will be high. So you have, let's say, typically globally you see pension funds, etc. They invest significantly in this because their return expectation is also lower, and they also want investors with a lower risk profile. But in Indian infrastructure sector, because of maybe the developer profile that we have, it was EPC companies who anyhow had a very high return expectation. Their return expectation was very high. And also since they didn't have that much of their own capital, they had to attract capital externally. So the capital was sought, let's say, from private equity funds. So if an investor like Goldman Sachs, they invest in a company, their return expectation will be 20-25% plus minimum. So that means that money needs to come from those projects. So, and infrastructure projects generally are awarded on a comparative bidding basis. So if it's a competitive bidding, then it's very difficult for you to win a project if you go conservative. That means developer has to go aggressive. But at that time, the market, the way it was looking at it was that a developer who has maximum assets without going into the asset quality, probably that's a good guy to have. So that's why in that when the going was good, all the people were focused on adding more and more assets to the portfolio. And IPO markets were also good. Many infrastructure companies got listed also in that market. The one who got listed, I think they had good capital to sustain themselves, but the one who couldn't tap the IPO markets, and when the issues started surfacing, all those infrastructure firms today are facing problems.
lenders also, the reason that they are taking so much exposure to this sector is because it broadly appeals to them. It's a concession business. You have a lower risk profile. You know that revenues ideally should have come. If it doesn't come, it's both developer as well as government agencies problem. Government agencies didn't do their bits as far as the consent clearances is concerned. And developer also to an extent that he went aggressive. I'll just give an example. So in power projects, typically there are two components on which bidding happens. There's something called the fixed capacity charge and there's the energy charge. Fixed capacity charge is on the fixed investment. So you have set up the plant and equipment. So you seek a return on that. And second is actual fuel part of it. Now fuel is generally not in the control of developer. You have to rely on a coal area to supply that. So in the bidding, you are supposed to give two parameters. Fixed charge, let's say for the over next 25-year period that you are seeking, and energy charge in the first year. And after that, depending upon the inflation at that point for time, the bidding agency will make its own calculations. There are predefined, let's say 6 or 7% is the inflation that they would consider for the energy charge component. And then they will levelize all the tariff to come at today, what's the effective tariff that the DISCOM has to pay. Based on that, whosoever has quoted the lowest would get the project. So what developers ideally, from a risk profile perspective, should have done is that they should have actually factored in their energy cost and quoted that component under the energy charge very early. But the reason was that actually the inflation was very high, 6-7%, and if they actually factored in the energy charge correctly, your bid was simply uncompetitive. So what people thought was that just to win bids, they actually loaded everything on the capacity charge bid, and a very small component was actually on the energy charge. So when the coal supply became an issue, or coal, if you have to rely on third party, coal from the auction, etc., those costs were not passable to the DISCOMs, and that means developers started defaulting. So it was clearly developer fault as well, not that government is part correctly, but it was both parties.
Very balanced view from E and Y. But Dr. Singh will not like to agree with you. Your balanced view. Dr. Singh, in fact, has the experience of handling some of the projects, power projects, where he was directly involved. And some of them were quite successful. The example that just now I have cited was the Tala Power. So Dr. Singh, in fact, would like to some success stories of the successful PPP projects in the power sector of the
Maybe I'm glad that the debate has put it this way, because the truth is somewhere in between. It's not that lenders don't want to make money or investors don't want to make money. At the same time, the investors and lenders also have to cover the risk. That is what is very important. Lending is again a factor of investment is also a factor of risk. The higher the risk, your expectation goes up. And risk is like you cannot see it actually. You cannot, certain risks can be quantified, but a lot of risk cannot be quantified. So you have a perception on risk. For example, there is country's perception of risk. So, and because of that, your cost of capital keeps on going up. So if you manage your risk well, you can bring down the cost of capital. He keeps on pointing to Tala example. In fact, the Tala example was the first PPP which was done in the power sector. And it was a success story where, in fact, what had happened in that case is that we called for bids, and since that time, after the double power experience, nobody wanted to bid in India in power sector. So it was the first bid of its kind. And when we called for bids, only two bidders participated, that is National Grid of UK and Tata Power of India. And this bid was not on tariff. This bid was on the capability of the executor to, we had points signed on the turnover, the balance sheet, number of power plants they operate, how many projects they have executed. That was the criteria for selection. And rightly so. I think this model of bidding, I have found that, I'll later on explain that, but this model of bidding comparatively is far more stable and successful compared to a only price kind of a model. In fact, Delhi reforms also were successful to a point, because they didn't go for price bidding. They went for AT&C, it was efficiency bidding, not the price bidding which determined the bidding system. So here, these two bidders were there, and so when National Grid came to India, since there was a definite return on equity, that was 16% return, and there was another majoration factor which was additional given to a foreign investor, that was 5% of the return on equity additional. So effectively, it made almost nearly 17% kind of a return. But they said that no, 17% is not good enough for us, and they backed out. Though they had become the successful bidder, they backed out. They said, we talked about 21-22% kind of bid. They said, if you don't get 21-22%, they backed out. So, so they backed out. So it was again a risk factor. And when we, then Tata Power chipped it later on, and when we started doing the financial closure for this, and we went to the Indian banks, they said this is project finance. Straight away project finance means it's outside balance sheet finance. So Power Grid hitherto had been doing it on the balance sheet. So they used to, give this, the borrowings used to happen at AAA prices. Now you say that you are doing the project finance. You say the project finance straight away you add 3.5%. Now, when we went with this kind of a, project cost to that time, you had to have, there used to be a system of, there used to be a public investment board of Government of India, which used to clear such large projects. So when we went there, the chairman of that board used to be the Secretary of Economic Affairs at that time. And he said that you are bringing private sector for efficiency, not inefficiency. You go back, bring down your cost, otherwise I am not clearing. So we started working on it. And then we found out there were certain things which the lenders were perceiving it as a project finance, but it was actually a balance sheet finance, because the transmission agreement or the power purchase agreement, in case of transmission it was transmission agreement, not power purchase agreement. The transmission agreement was between the the developer and the Power Grid Corporation. So it was effectively lending to Power Grid Corporation. So when the risks were explained to the lenders, same lenders, IFC, DEG, and so on, Indian banks, they agreed to lend at almost AAA rate kind of rates. So what is very important here is that risks are significantly managed. So if the risks are significantly managed, then you are able to bring down the cost of capital. And on the back side, lenders, we all operate on, everybody would agree here, on a certain spread. We are not mostly here to make. On certain type of lending, yes, we do try to make some margins. Particularly IDFC is quite good at it. That's why they went in the corporate project, they came for the financing. But many times, we work on a certain spread. Now that spread is determined on my cost of capital, how much I have borrowed. So on that I put a spread. So if a project is, if I am lending to a project which has low risk, my cost of capital will come down on the liability side. So I will pass on that benefit to the project. So it's very, very important that while we do, we have to have, now it's not about making money or not making money. It's doing business at a benchmark spread or an accepted standard spread. That is what we do. While we do so, we have to ensure that because spread is not the major cost of the capital. Major cost of the capital is your borrowing which happens. Spread is only maybe 10, 15 or 20% the cost of capital. So if you are able to bring down the cost there, the benefit will come to the project. When the benefit comes to the project, the user pays less. That's where you balance. You have to balance everything. And infrastructure is all about balancing. It's again,
balancing the interest of all these things.
Yeah, and that's why you have so many stakeholders. You have the government, you have the regulator, you have the financer, you have the equity player.
Yes.
Everybody has to be there.
Yes. Yeah, please.
So I think there are a lot of success stories. It's not that everything is bad over here. If you look at roads, I think Professor Sanjay Bakshi loves to talk about that case of Noida Toll Bridge. The stock price went up to 40-50 rupees, now at I think 25 or 25. So that is a great success story. It even has land available. So if a project is structured well, it will make money, and everybody will associated with that project will make money. If you look at the port sector, now initial projects which were where the concessions were skewed more in favor of the developers. There you got a lot of competition. You had good developers coming in, taking the risk and generating capital. But unfortunately, over the period of time, what has happened is that greed has taken over. Not just for the private developers, but for the government also. NHAI, we talk about how high-handed they are.
how they Mukesh talked about how there is no termination payment before commissioning, and they anyways downplay the project cost. So they are covering their risks there. So you have to see how the risks can be weighed and spread across various parties. Gordon Gekko said greed is good. In infrastructure, I don't think that works. In case of infrastructure, greed is bad. You have to see what is the optimum solution which works for all parties. And that's the only way you can have a viable project in infrastructure.
So I think Mukesh ji, Dr. Singh and Mr. Vikas and Mayank, all of you in fact have basically stressed three very important points in as lenders. That if the project is well structured, everybody would like to be in the project. See, if the government has a political will to implement the project with sort of guarantees, then yes, then they would like to join hands. Third, the benefits of the project accruing in terms of, for the larger society, in terms of contributing to the economic development of this country, everybody would like to join hands, no problem. The last point, that is a point which differentiates. The lenders may go away from the project vehicle if there is uncertainty in terms of cash flow, or if there is a huge risk involved in between, which you said, invisible risks. Some risks are quantified, some risks are not quantified, invisible risks. Then the Delhi-Gurgaon Expressway project and the Expressway Link project that you talked about, invisible risks. You were not sure about it, and then you have to do a backward integration and then took your money out. So guys, you are the young minds, very intelligent minds, and reading newspapers every day, the researchers, I think it's the right time for you to ask questions, throw your questions to the lenders. And let us start from, yes, Raman, you have a question?
I would like to know what's your opinion about smart cities, like the portion which I covered. We came across dividing the smart cities was very a bit difficult. Talking about the financial viability and all. So what's your point of view? Should we go for the smart cities from the scratch, or should we go for the smart cities like Gurgaon, the vicinity of Delhi, or maybe Nayu vicinity of Mumbai?
No, what is your question? Smart development of smart cities, or role of lenders in developing the smart cities?
Development of smart cities.
Make this smart city to attract an investment, then of course it has to be near to the metro. That is there. But if the objective is that yes, we have to make a smart city which is from the government funded, and it is good for people to stay with good infrastructure in a planned manner, then it has to be away from that metro and right from the scratch, as we have seen the Chandigarh or the Gandhinagar. It is away and it was built right from the scratch, and that's why it is planned. So it depends upon the objective with which we want to start.
See, ideally, if you look at it, the issue that most of the industrial development, industry or service development in India is actually concentrated on other metros, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai. So if you just develop places like Gurgaon, which are very, very near to Delhi, then the pressure on the overall infrastructure will just keep on increasing more and more. So if government has that, so ideally, if you develop cities from the scratch, let's say Delhi, Mumbai industrial corridor is being taken up. So there will be sample, so there will be industrial demand also on that, right? And there is scope for development of cities around that, which are well planned. So I guess that we should have water source which is nearby. So in places like Gurgaon, the water is an issue. So having more and more population coming into Gurgaon may be a challenge. So you may probably for existing cities, overall infrastructure should go up. Yes, power is a problem in Gurgaon, government should take care of it. But if a massive development is planned, then probably new greenfield cities, provided economic justification. So it's a mix.
The objective really is to ensure that all the population that is there in the city gets distributed, right? So that's why you want to create these centers where you will migrate your population. But then you have to create the right infrastructure there for people to migrate. That is number one. Second, in existing cities, it's not possible to create that infrastructure at all. It will be too expensive. So it's not possible to do it.
Okay, anybody? Yes.
So my question is regarding the DMIC.
So that we have been discussing all along was the projects which are given on a concession basis. EPC as a business, we have Indian companies who are very, very experienced and they have been doing this business for 30, 40 years. It's a good track record. Companies like Gammon, etc. are very, very good in EPC business. The issue started when they got into developer business. So in DMIC, with projects like DMIC, typically, first of all, they are being taken up in partnership with, let's say, Japan. So you have a lot of technical cooperation which is coming into the here. And not much development is happening on the BOT side. So a lot of it is actually happening on the EPC contracting side, which if if the developer has did it consciously, if it's structured properly, then it shouldn't be that much of an issue. So I think broader the DMIC etc. For example, it's more of government side delays etc. which are happening, but otherwise nothing on the private sector side that issue have been reported.
But then it's not a PPP project in that sense.
It's a general contracting.
Yes, madam.
Sana from the Indian Express.
Yes.
Actually, my question was relating to him because they
Smart
spoke about smart cities, and I thought in the content as such, I think it would have been a great idea to there were so many case studies. I think when you talk about smart cities, when you talk about boom cities, I think Gurgaon is the first boom city made 15 kilometers towards NCR. I think it would have been a great idea to do a little case study for a couple of minutes on Gurgaon and the creaking and the stumbling infrastructure that we have in there. I think it would have been great.
Yeah, great. Anybody from this side, gentlemen? Come. Yes.
You mentioned the 4 reasons that land acquisition and termination payment, project cost and viability are the reasons why lenders are shying away from that. Now, given that you have given the what are the problems that lenders face, now if we see from the solution perspective, how much do you think reducing the red tape, say for the land acquisition or for other environmental clearances, would actually help lenders to finance more of these infrastructure projects? Ignoring the part that where EPC contractors come in and they try to finance equity through their cash flows. How much do you think that actually reducing the red tape would help in boosting the infrastructure projects, lending to that?
From lenders' perspective, before any disbursement to be made now onwards, lenders have decided that until unless land acquisition is there, 100% we will not do it. And similarly, it goes for the environmental clearances. Now, lenders has nothing to do with how you take the approvals, environmental clearance, for which the new government has minimized the processes. They have tried to make it automatic. The approval for this environmental clearances for a project less than 100 crore or less than 500 crore, they had tried to make it automatic. But from lenders' perspective, it doesn't matter. Now they have said that environmental clearances should be in place first, and land acquisition should be in place before my money is put into this project. So that is there.
Let me add on over. See, the point is, what you need to look at is that the project needs, basically a lot is happening. Okay, in the last couple of months, the model concession agreement has undergone a major revamp. So some of these lender concerns are being taken care of. But the problem is that right now, even if the government were to implement everything and want that all new projects are done on PPP basis, there is no capital available. Because the lender debt funds are tied up in projects which are in distress. Equity capital of the EPC contractors or developers is tied up in projects which are in distress. New capital from outside India, either in the form of equity capital from private equity investors or in the form of ECBs, is not coming in because they feel that India is still not as safe as it should be. So there is so you have to bifurcate it into what has happened in the past and what is going to happen in the future. What has happened in the past, you have to correct those mistakes first and free up capital so that it can be deployed. Unfortunately, while there is a lot that is being thought about on how to improve things going forward, not a lot is being done to resolve the past issues.
It is in railway sector how the triple T projects cannot be implemented in everyone, how difficult the red tape, crossing the red tape is.
But I want to know what is the current situation is like the net of FDI coming in and the new government and the new railway ministry with the huge credentials coming in. What is the outlook? Is it neutral or is it like very positive and people are ready to lend?
No difference.
No difference.
See, I'll tell you. So I'll give you a live example. It's a inland container depot north of Delhi. 99.9% complete. Everything, lenders, funds, equity, everything, construction, completely everything done. June 2013. Okay. What was missing? 2 sleepers, maybe 2 meters length connectivity from the main railway track to our railway track. That is not there, and that has taken 15 months for approvals. And after the new government came in, again it went through its whole rounds, and it's still taken 6 months. Now finally that thing is connected, and then suddenly customs realized, oh God, I didn't know I had to give that particular approval. So while now trains are plying, but you can't have a single box moving out because the customs has not given us final approval.
Third, yes, ma'am.
The infrastructure gaps in India would be maximum in regions such as maybe Northeast comes to my mind. Those are the regions where the infrastructure is at its least. And let's say you have the port connectivity or maybe the airport connectivity. It's up till Calcutta and then it's very, very, very little. So there, I think right now if you look at the investment there, it would be at its minimum, and there is little commercial viability as well. There's a lot of risk involved with the projects. You never know if a project will go on till completion or not. There are a lot of risks actually. So is there some way to attract investment in those?
What do you expect that the lenders should do?
Or are the commercially driven institutions actually investing here, or is it something best left to the government?
There is. So we will always talking in the form of BOT contracts, but you've also got annuity contracts, which is just effectively a deferred EPC kind of a concession. But so any project which is taken up by the ministry or NHAI, that also post its evaluation goes through various steps. First, its viability is seen whether it can be taken up on BOT basis. If they realize that this is not viable on BOT basis, then they come down to whether it should be done on annuity or EPC basis. The fact remains that you are still funding it. You are paying taxes, you are paying cess on your petrol to fund those projects.
But lot many annuity projects have come up in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, but many annuity projects has come, and in those annuity projects, even during the construction period, there has been a grant. So those kind of structure is there in annuity. But yes, commercial angle has to be there, otherwise the government will fund it.
Actually, see what happens, infrastructure again is a different ballgame. What may appear to be unviable today will suddenly become quite viable. You have a road project, hardly any vehicle to climb, but suddenly you will find because of some development around the corner, a lot of vehicles will start flying. I'll give you an example. Out of political reasons, Power Grid was supposed to build up a lot of lines in northeastern regions. They were not viable. They were not very viable. And because the state power utilities also were not very rich, so normally they have a cost plus tariff model for transmission. But here they had said that it will be based on the unit of power flow, how much power is flowing. Now, incidentally, power flow used to be 10%, 12%. And all the time, Power Grid is to keep on listening to the regulator that you revise this method from as it followed elsewhere in India, that is cost plus, from the power flow model. And the regulator would keep on cutting it down because the capability of northeastern states is not there. And then of course they used to keep on knocking government's door that give me viability funding or budget to support. Suddenly you had scores of hydro projects coming in northeastern region. And there was a congestion. So not only these lines which had been built up, not only they were being utilized 70-80%, but there was congestion because of lack of transmission lines. So not necessarily that is why what China did. they have moved ahead of the demand. They have gone much ahead of the demand. So if the demand is for say 3 ring roads, they have given 17 ring roads. That is the kind of infrastructure they have built. And because of that, so much of capital flow also happened. So it's again, a question of viewpoint, how you look at it. Luckily, the present Prime Minister is thinking that way. He's thinking big at least. That is also very important.
Yes, I have a question, last question. So the title is attracting long-term capital into Indian infrastructure sector. So if you look at the various sources of funding of the infrastructure projects, and if we want to sustain it for a long time, so I think your funds are there only for 5 years or 6 years, 7 years, not for 20 years and 50 years. For Mayank has said that we are not in a business which is where the concession period is for 30 years, 25 years. Now tell me, if Modi wants, you said that Modi is at least thinking big, dreaming big, but in order to translate that dream into reality, you need money. But you guys are there only for 5 years and 6 years locking. Our title is attracting long-term capital. So what are the different sources of the funds that you can suggest, which can be a long-term source on a sustainable basis? For example, do you think that could it be capital market, bond market?
So, I started off mentioning about the mismatch right from day one, where working capital of EPC players was locked up for a long-term concession.
Agreed.
A lot has happened since then, but basically what you need to do is bifurcate any infrastructure project into 2 parts: the construction period and the operating period.
Okay.
The same capital which is funding the construction period cannot continue for the operating.
So we need to have 2 different ones.
Exactly. Now, right now the concessions lock the developer during the operations period also. That link has to be broken.
Yes.
And after that, you have sources of capital available. You've got IFCL who's giving loans. You've instituted IDFs, which are long-term safe capital.
Also
IFC again. Then in case of equity, you need to target pension funds. Unfortunately, that is the biggest source of equity capital,
right now,
which is not tapped in India. Our fund, 90% of our funding, private equity funding, is from pension funds across the world. They see the potential in Indian infrastructure, but unfortunately, Indian pension funds don't see the potential.
Because he's looking at you very critically. I think he does not seem to be in agreement with you. Because why are you so critical?
I am in total agreement with my.
You are in total.
Yeah. In fact, so as a pool of capital, given that all the issues that Indian banks are facing with the infrastructure sector, I think it will be some time before they actually, start looking at new projects. And since India is looking at, let's say, $1 trillion investments, that means somehow those new projects also need to be funded. So new sources of capital necessarily need to be tapped. So first is there are 2 issues. One is debt and second is equity. As Mayank was saying, once the project is operational, after that the existing developer should be able to get out. That will take care of equity requirement, right? But how will he exit? So government actually is taking certain steps. For example, infrastructure investment trust, etc. Though it's still at a proposal stage, not finalized, but once it comes into place, it will actually help developers exit the operational assets. So idea is if you have a highway project, you plug 3 or 4 highway projects, put that in a separate trust, and take your capital back. So that capital which developer has now actually can be deployed in new projects. So that will help take care of the equity requirements bit of it. The one point that you had also touched upon in your presentation was this credit enhancement part of it. See, one reason that corporate bond market in India is not developed is that underlying credit rating of individual projects is not great. That's where institutions like IFCL or ADB come into picture. Till now, for some reason, this particular product had not taken off as it. I think there was just one project, which was GMR project, which has actually where IFCL and ADB had given this particular product, but somehow I think that transaction also didn't finally happen. But going forward now, we actually see that many developers are actively engaged with IFCL and ADB, and to that extent, it will help free up the existing bank's capital and also help lower the cost of capital for developers.
No, I think Dr. Singh is smiling. I know why he is smiling. Because Dr. Singh would like, what is in your mind, sir? I can be. Yes.
See what happens is, I'll just give you an example. The Prime Minister called the MNRE secretary and that renewable energy secretary, and he told that India should add 20,000 megawatt every year, right, of solar power. Today India has 4,000 megawatts. The cumulative is 4,000, he says you add 20,000. Now this guy is puzzled as to how does he do it. So he says, Prime Minister, that it's not possible, that there's a very super kind of a target and you can't do it. He says, whatever you want from me, you take. And you do it. Whatever support you want, I will do it. But he also, is not very clear as to what needs to be done. So what he does, he goes and calls CMDs of all corporations. That is what he can do. Public sector. Right? He says, Coal India, you will do 5,000. Right? BHEL, you will do another 3,000. Right? Power Grid, you will do 4,000. So like that he allocates to, and then he ends up with a figure of say 12,000, 13,000. So it leaves about 7,000 which states will do, and rest can come through policy, private sector and so on. So that's how you go about doing it. Similarly, in case of infra financing, what we did is we created an IFCL kind of machine, right? And we said that IFCL will do takeout financing and it will also do the credit financing. Now what is the size of balance sheet of IFCL for us to see that? How much credit enhancement they can do? Apart from because they are also into lending business. So how much of spare capacity in balance sheet is available? And it's peanuts compared to the $1 trillion kind of investment you're talking about. So as they say in US, what have you done with the democracy? They say that we have created the Statue of Liberty. So similarly, here what we have done out of take out and you have created IFCL and said that we have started takeout financing in India. So you can showcase everywhere in the world. Now you talked about infrastructure debt fund. Now I'm also in the board of IFCL, the debt fund company. And when the first debt fund was done by them, they invited me to that function where the then finance minister, Mr. Chitambran, was to inaugurate this. And there were the first time there is a corpus of 300 crores. Now, corpus of 300 crores is infrastructure. Where does it go?
One project.
But they were showcasing it because it's the first of a kind done in the country. So all the bank CMDs who had put money there, they were also sitting. And Mr. Chitambram, he was a very bright, undoubtedly a very bright and competent person. So when he entered and everybody was expecting a pat on the back. Because first fund of idea fund had been launched in the country. And he asked who are the people who have subscribed to this fund. And he very proudly, the IFC and CFD said that all these banks, Union Bank, Canara Bank, Corporation Bank, they are the ones who have subscribed to it. He said, I set up this fund precisely that the bank money will not come here. And you have done just opposite. You have brought the bank money here. So, though we have created instruments like credit enhancement and all that, it's just a flash in the pan. It really doesn't help us so much. What is very important in India is that we have to develop project finance model. We are not used to it. And many of my co-panelists have been saying that in India we are used to working capital kind of lending model. We have not developed the model of project finance in India. And project finance model can only become sustainable if you have a very vibrant second tier bond market. Not the first tier, not the government security kind of bond market or the AAA kind of corporate. You're crowding industry. So if you have bond market for say A class paper or BBB plus kind of paper, that's where your project finance will start happening. If you are not able to develop a bond market, your IDF scheme, your credit enhancement scheme, nothing is going to work. Nor will you be able to tap the long-term funds which are required, your pension funds, PM funds, and which is very much required. Now, for example, the Central Provident Fund scheme of India. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner, what is the kind of corpus he handles? Nearly 15 lakh crore. That is the kind of corpus. None of this money is going into infrastructure except few bonds of NTPC. None of it is going there. Now, I go to, once I went to him and I said that boss gives some money to me, I want to put it in renewable energy. This Prime Minister is talking about it, being green and all that. So put some money in the renewable energy space. It's a wonderful thing. It's socially relevant. He says, "What is your rating?" I said, "I'm a very private company. I will not get AAA. I'm pretty recent, so I am only A plus." He said, "Forget it. I cannot. That I'm talking to you is good enough. Have a cup of tea and go from here, because we either lend to government security or we lend to public sector with double, triple A rating. So that leaves room for how many companies to draw this kind of a cap. So this kind of liberalization is required. Then you allow pension and provident part of their money to be invested in equity. 5%. World over this is allowed. Only in India we don't allow. So every fund has some kind of a risk money. You have to have risk money. You can't take risk on all your capital, but you have to take limited risk in some of your capital. And you have to take further high risk in very, very small portion of your capital. That's how you give a return to your people who have subscribed to it. Now what happens? The Provident Fund guy who's put money there, whoever has put money there, he gets 8.5%, 8.7%, 8.8% kind of return. Your inflation rate is about that. So he's getting zero return. So both sides, neither the sector is getting money, nor the person who has put money there is getting his required return. These are structural reforms which need to be addressed. Otherwise, you will be only touching things at the surface level and just trying to showcase, like your, please don't quote me outside, like your that Clean Bharat, this program which happened. You finally
don't record it.
you find CMDs of PSUs wearing tie and with a broom standing and getting themselves photographed and putting in the newspaper. It shouldn't become that kind of a thing. Just you are trying to kind of showcase the whole thing, but really nothing is happening. So that's where structural reforms are very important.
At the end, to sum up a few lines, from the discussions of the distinguished panelists, let us now summarize some of the key points. Mr. Raman, Number one, the last word that Dr. Singh has said is structural reforms. Become the first key word. Yes, we do agree that the structural reforms in the power sector, in the road sector, both sectors are very much required, and I think Vikas will agree with me as a consultant. And second point, which is very important, is that we need to structure the project. Project structuring has to be done in such a way that it attracts all the stakeholders, including the lenders, should also be motivated to be a part of that particular SPV. The third point that the distinguished panelists have also touched upon is this, that lenders are very much interested, keenly interested to contribute significantly because they are flush with funds. They are flush with funds. It's not only for 5 years or 6 years, they are going to fund it for long years. They want that sort of commitment from the developers, a sort of commitment from the EPC contractors by the shareholders in terms of the agreements, concession agreements and other agreements, legal documents being verified through due diligence exercise and all that, that yes, there are risks, but the risks are being allocated among different stakeholders. It's not that SBI caps, it's not that IDFC or PFS are going to have 50% or 60% of the burden of the risk. No, if that kind of the arrangement of the risk sharing accountability is done among all the stakeholders, including the state government and the central government. The moment you talk about the land issues, it belongs to the state government. So the state government, the state chief minister will also have to be a party to that particular project. Otherwise, land issue becomes a major issue. Whole project is cost away. Project cost was very high. The fourth point, in fact, to be considered from your discussion is this, that when we talk about the attracting the long-term capital and the young minds, researchers have also touched upon those in various sectors while we were talking about, is that bond market. Dr. Singh has rightly pointed out that the bond market, the capital market, the pension funds, the equity funds are going to be the future sort of capital in our country. But then credit rating. If the ratings are AAA, fine, then you are attractive. If your ratings are B or less than B, B plus, nobody will be there. That's the real problem as to how to, improve our ratings through our increasing the efficiency of the project itself. So therefore, I think, thank you very much, sir. Now I request our mentor of this, please come and sum up the
I would like to thank all our esteemed panelists for coming over to Delphique, to MDI for Delphique 2014 and engaging in this thought-provoking discussion as a part of the Finance Economics panel partnered by Ernst & Young. Now Team Delphique would like to present mementos to our esteemed panelists. We start with Dr. Pawan Singh. Sharma. And last but not the least, a faculty mentor, Professor Atmanand. I once again thank the research team for their insightful research and take the opportunity to thank our esteemed panelists who took time out of the packed schedule to be a part of this panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks to the coordinator because we have also spent so much of time with you guys.